Happy Wednesday, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're excited to have you all on. My name is Elizabeth Rico, and I'm Outreach Manager of Leadership and Business Development here at the Arizona Farm Bureau. And we are talking about the On-Farm Ranch Water Irrigation Efficiency Grant. It's a mouthful. But we are super excited this month to have Dr. Ethan Orr and Stephanie Brennan from the University of Arizona, our resident water experts, to talk about nuances with the program, how to navigate it, and how to see if you qualify and how to get some free money to help your operations run smoothly. So thank you guys for joining us. I appreciate having you here.
Thank you, Elizabeth. We appreciate it.
A couple housekeeping items as we're having everyone jump on. So while we can't see or hear you, there's a chat feature and a Q&A feature down at the very bottom. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, let us know, jump in, and we'll ask those as we come through them or at the very end. This is a perfect opportunity to get some insight to the grant process itself and ask the man and the gal who are in charge of making all of this magic come to life. So Dr. Orr and Stephanie, do you want to kick us off and introduce yourselves a little bit?
Sure. And I'm going to let Stephanie introduce herself right afterwards. My name is Ethan Orr. I'm the Associate Director for the Arizona Cooperative Extension. I do all of the agriculture, natural resources, and economic development, and I'm a professor in agriculture technology here at the University of Arizona. And before we start in the presentation, I would like to say a big thank you to the Farm Bureau, to Elizabeth, and to my good friend Phil Bashaw and Sarah Smallhouse. We at the university greatly value our partnership with the Farm Bureau going back decades and decades, and this is something that we hope to continue to build on that foundation going forward. I value the Farm Bureau, and I really appreciate being able to partner with the Farm Bureau to educate our communities. Stephanie?
My name is Stephanie Brennan. I'm the Administrative Assistant for the Water Irrigation Efficiency Program. So if there are any questions after our session today, I'd be happy to assist anybody. I'm also a graduate student at the University of Arizona studying Water Society and Policy and Urban Planning.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Ready for me to share the screen?
Yes, please.
All right, perfect. Let's get right into it.
Thank you. As always, as we're going through, please feel free to chat with Elizabeth if you have questions during the slide, or Elizabeth, if you have any questions at all as I'm walking through. The real point of this is to convey the information and to have a conversation about this program. The program was initiated last year by the legislature. Representative Dunn and Senator Kerr were the primary sponsors. Representative Dunn has been a champion of the legislation last year and this year. And really what came about of that, it was truly a bipartisan, almost all of the Republicans and Democrats supported it. This was funded eventually through the governor's office. Both Governor Ducey and then Governor Hobbs' new administration fully support this program because they want to invest in ourselves. They want to invest in Arizona agriculture. And as you see, as we're walking through, it's actually the most cost-effective and the best public policy in terms of saving money for our entire state. And so that's what I've been really talking to our legislative and our community leaders about. Investing in agriculture is the way forward to resolve the drought across the state, across the cities, for every Arizonan. When we invest in agriculture, we invest in ourselves, and we create the most cost-effective and best solution in Arizona. Next slide, please. I'm happy to do it.
On billboards.
I'm a fourth-generation Arizonan, and I very much believe in this state, and I very much believe in our ability to come together. One thing that I will say before I launch into the talk, into the program, to build on what Elizabeth said, is we've been talking about a lot of scary things in water. Deadpool in 2 years. Is the federal government going to cut all of the CAP allocation for our friends, my friends in Pinal County? The ag allocation has already been cut to zero. PM10, if you reduce your farms, you have serious dust issues. I mean, there are some very serious issues. that this state is facing and has faced in the past. And before I talk about what we do in the future, I want to point something out in the past that I'm very proud of as a native Arizonan. We use less water now than we did in 1962 as a state. When I was doing my research, really looking at this struck me. I won't go through what 1 million acre feet means. It's a heck of a lot of water, and we'll talk about that. In 1962, we used 7.3. In 2022 or 2020, we use 7. So we use less water with, if you look at it, over 3 times the population, from 1.4 to 7.1 million. And the thing that excites me, if you look in inflation adjusted dollars, the value of our crop productivity actually went up. So then it went up by almost $1 billion. So we have produced more and we have more people. And to echo the mantra that was started by my friends in Yuma, we have produced more crop per drop in both value and overall output. And that is because of programs like this, where we invest in ourselves and our irrigation district. So I always want to say it is dark, but historically we've always done well as a state, and I believe we will going forward. So I'm not afraid of Deadpool, because we will find a way to resolve it. Next slide, please. So this program was, like I said, started, and we'll talk about it, $30 million through the governor's office. There's another $30 million that is currently being discussed about during this legislative session. And there are some criteria to be involved in the program. These were all set within the legislative statute. These are not University of Arizona policies. These are legislative statutes. So these are kind of the guardrails of the program overall. The goal is to help growers transition from flood to a form of another irrigation watering system. That could be sprinklers, a center pivot system. That could be a drip, above ground, below ground drip, anything else besides flood. There are currently, we estimate about 250,000 acres of flood. So if you look at this program, it's just a small drip. I will say, and I'll share some of the successes we've had with the first set of money that we've been working. We've been building a panel of experts, and we've already been working with farmers, and that once those projects are in, take about 8,600 acres off of flood to something else. One thing I have to say, and this is why I value your feedback so much, there is a number of iterative changes that have been made to this program as we worked with growers and community leaders. And we went directly to the legislative leadership and we said, and the leadership and the legislature itself, really because of Representative Dunn, has listened to us and made changes. So one of those changes, because I understand very dearly the biological constraints that we face, particularly soil health and salinity and overall crop productivity. So if you achieve this, you can still flood. And I know a number of us, even if we switch to a drip or a center pivot, may need flood for germination. We may need flood to push the salt down below the root level. So this does not preclude flooding at any point. It just means that you have to go to that second point, switch systems and achieve a 20% water efficiency gain, which is very doable. I can tell you it sounds daunting, but a lot of our systems have been able to do that. One benefit, and then again, this is because mainly because of our growers in Yuma, that we were able to communicate back to the legislature. When I talked to the leadership, the legislature, I did not want to punish growers who have already done a number of very progressive and advanced things in terms of crop management. They've already been laser leveling. They've already have advanced telemetry on their head gates. And so particularly if you're in Yuma, the difference between the valley and the mesa, you know that the people in the valley, because the leafy greens have such a high marginal value, they have already done these things. And so what our committee has been able to do is we can use things that you have done above the standard practice to help you achieve that 20%. So if you have a field and you've laser leveled it, we can do like a 5% bonus as you're switching to a new system. You have to own the land, or for those of us that have sold and leased back, have a permission of the landowner for a 3-year commitment. We have to put this in and be able to monitor the water savings over 3 years, again, by state statute. So I do have to have an agreement that that system will be put in place and kept in place for 3 years. The grantees obviously are responsible for paying the vendor. We have worked very closely with our finance office, and so we will work and partner with you, but that's the money will go, as I'll talk about, to the farmer, and the farmer will pay the vendor. Also, anything above the 1,500 an acre that I'm going to talk about is really incumbent on you. One thing that I'm working very hard to do, particularly for those of us that are taking Colorado River water, is find ways to leverage, for example, the $400 acre foot bonus. Also, if there is an EQIP grant or some of these other programs from the USDA, I have made this program very flexible, and I will work with you because my goal is ultimately to support you and get as much money focused on your field as possible to help this transition. And for some of our friends in Pinal County, this is exactly what you need, because as you know better than I, that shift from irrigated water to well water, you just don't have the pressure sometimes to flood, especially of a 600-foot run. And so you really do have to switch to something. And this helps make that feasible, particularly combining it with other programs. Can you hit the next slide, please? So basically the whole program is we can reimburse you up to $1,500 an acre to switch to another system, up to $1 million per farm. And that it comes out to like 666 acres. It's an unfortunate number. I'm sure the legislature didn't do that on purpose, but that is our goal. We basically can pay you up to $1,500 an acre to switch to do this. And we have allocated in this tranche of money, $23 million directly to the growers. We also have $1 million that is going to really test and study, because one thing that's important to me is the long-term viability of the soil and the crop. So it's not just about putting, as you know better than I, putting less water on a root. It's about soil biomes and nematodes and all these things that's going on under the ground. And it's ultimately about crop productivity and profitability. The other thing that I need to say, a couple points that have come up in a number of ways that is important to me personally, and I've fought very hard for. This is your land. This is your crop. I am, the Extension Service is very pleased of the academic and the intellectual capacity that we have to support you as growers and as producers, but we play a support role, really providing information. I don't have a right to tell anyone what to grow on their land, nor do I want that right. We have crop experts who can help you do the econometrics and figure out a crop that's best for you. But I do not want to use this program to dictate what crop you grow. Some of the water savings can be achieved by moving to a different crop. And there are some crops such as Waiuli that look very positive in some areas, like again, Pinal County, because they do well when they're water stressed. But I can't reiterate enough, I want to be on your farm, partnering with you, getting data to show the state how good we are as a farming community. I do not want to tell people what you can grow and can't grow. The other thing, because water is such a contentious issue to fight about, and our university lawyers have supported me on this, I do not identify, we would like farmers to work with us to get media and partner there once the system is in place. But I don't share your farm level data. I don't share your individual data, nor do I ever plan to. I plan to de-identify that data. Instead of this farm, farm 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I aggregate it at the county level. What happens on your farm in water savings is very important, and we want you to be successful because of the cost of that input. I do not, and what you do with the water is your right and your business. I'm aggregating the numbers because that farm level data does not need to be shared. Next slide, please. And Elizabeth, please ask any questions as we're moving along. Basically, this is to walk through the how this will actually work. And I actually also can send you a slide that's a little bit better on the flow chart. But basically, the grower will apply for the funding. This is a relationship between the University of Arizona and the grower. And I have a committee that is made up of both industry experts, some farmers, and some people that are managers in irrigation districts, and then a number of people who you probably work with already from the Extension Service in climate and row crop and soil and irrigation. People like Charlie Sanchez and Debunker are on this committee, and we look at every application. And what we're trying to do is look at what you're doing to make sure it can achieve a 20% water efficiency gain. The vendor that you use has to have done that in another place. Almost every, it's a small world of less than a dozen. Every major vendor in the state has done that or could do that quite easily. And then they also have to have $2 million in commercial liability before they put that system in. Again, almost every reputable vendor would. At that point, once this committee approves it, you, the grower, and they've already been countersigned by the U of A, would sign a contract with the University of Arizona. At that point, that has the contractual force of law, and we will honor funding the project. It may be slow because we're a large bureaucracy. I'm making it as fast as possible, but we will honor that. At that point, our financial team will walk you through step by step, creating a purchase order, a vendor agreement, all those things you do with large bureaucracies. And then you will issue, and we'll give you a template invoice, an invoice for the first 50% of the project. I wanted to work very hard, where many of us are capital rich, but not necessarily working capital rich. And so I did not want to impose upon your financial assets, particularly with the interest rates going up and the cost of money going up. And so we would advance you the first 50%. At that point, you would engage with the vendor and pay the vendor. Once 50% of the project is done, we would verify, we would send a university employee out and partner with you to make sure 50% is done. Then we would send you the other 50%, and you would finish up the project with the vendor. We would verify, and then we would start to partner with you to collect that data, particularly on water savings for the legislature and governor. We actually was able to find someone and bring her on board that is we used to run capital projects for Tucson Water. So we have a very strong team to help us manage this. And then the other thing, if there's an application and we're putting a system in, not just all at once, but across the field, because of the way we're rotating crops, it doesn't have to be 2 payments. We would say you're doing something in August, we could do half of that. And then say you're, in February, you're doing another rotation on another part of the field, we could do the half then. So we can break this into as many payments as makes sense and is reasonable. The main thing is we would need to work with you over the next 3 years after the system is in place to really collect that data. The data you put in, we're going to partner with the irrigation district to verify. The data that you report going along, we'll be working with the irrigation districts, and then also in some areas, we would need to put in microflow meters to get field level data. Next slide, please. This is what we're seeing so far, and this is kind of us as agriculture showing off a little bit. I'm extraordinarily proud of what we've seen, but I will also say that 20% is an irrigation efficiency gain. So one thing that I've done is I'm trying to build out our Mesonet, our ASMET, so that I can help you with the ET coefficients, and we have academics and scientists to really help you calculate that. But this is an irrigation efficiency improvement program, and that is the primary calculation and formula we're going to be using. I know there's other ways of calculating efficiency gain, water gain, crop gain. This is an irrigation efficiency grant that's embedded in the legislation. What we've seen from the first 20 applications that have gone through, which from our side has been almost $10 million, because people are putting in sprinklers, in many cases center pivots, and as you know, this can be above 1,500, sometimes 2,500. They are putting in their own money to the tune of 39%. And so we've seen almost 15 million in project benefit for the state, that the state isn't off the money, the state is invested in us. Off of that, like I said, 8,600 acres are moving, transitioning away from flood, and the estimated conservation is already just over 25,000 water acre feet. To put that in context, if you live in the valley, down in Phoenix, That is over 8 times the size of Tempe Town Lake, which is only 3,000 water acre feet. Someone in Tucson said, but what about Tucson? It's much smaller. We have Silverbell Lake. That is over 385 times the size of Silverbell Lake. So this is significant savings that investing in agriculture is producing for the entire state. And that cost, the $377 per water acre foot, is the best investment you can have. Again, to put it in context, some of the desalinization ideas that people have been talking about, if I did desalinization down at the Cio Cortez, for example, that could run me $3,000 per acre foot. Even if I did something off the 303 with that perched inland desalinization, you're looking about 2,000. So this investment is very, very good use of public money investing in our farmers. We're projecting incredible water savings, and that is our hope. Right now, the legislature is moving through their budget phase. It's a little bit paused as we're waiting for a new member to be appointed, but the Representative Dunn has introduced 2 bills, one for $30 million to refund this program next year, because we've already set up the overhead and all the evaluation components. Almost all of it would go towards research and on-farm directly these programs. Almost all of it, about 29 million, would go directly to you, the farmer. And so we're pleased if you see a representative, let them know how important that is to you. And then Representative Dunn, because one thing that is very important, and I've seen this through your eyes, is the world of soil amendments and all these different contraptions that can do something. There's another discussion about funding 2 million, and I see it almost the way Randy does his cotton variety trials. I see it doing variety trials on soil amendments across the 3 experiment stations, because I want to be able to research and provide data to you, not just on water efficiency gain, but what does it do to the soil? How does it affect different types of crops? And so I really want to help the extension move in a direction where we're giving you very pertinent information on some of the products that you have to decide and face every day, just like we do with seeds. And so that both of those are going through. If you like this program, please tell your legislature. They will be discussing the budget over the next few months, and hopefully in May or June, deciding on that budget. And so any new money that goes in, that 30 million, will go directly to the farmers. Next slide, please. This is basically, and if you go to this link, that will take you right to the application. We actually have an online portal, PDF that you can fill out, and Stephanie really manages that. We meet every second or 2 times every other Thursday and look through all these applications. And once they are approved, we are doing as much as we can to get that money in your hands so that you can start transitioning to a new system. With that, Elizabeth, do you have any questions for me, or are there any questions from the audience?
We actually have questions come in. Give me a second.
Okay.
And also, this is a great time to note, if you have questions, don't forget the Q&A box down at the very bottom. You can ask anything that you have questions on, and we can answer them. I say we. Dr. Orr and Stephanie, our resident experts, can answer those for you. So a couple of them you may have already answered. They came through as you were presenting. But the first one says, how soon after contracting will funding be available to proceed?
So I guess to unpack that, do you mean, I guess I'll walk through that whole process. When you fill out the application, and Stephanie's done a great job working with our extension technology team to really automate all of this. And so it is a fillable PDF. The main hangups that people have had, that's why I mentioned the ET and all these different coefficients, is really calculating your current water usage, what your projected water usage will be, and that efficiency. And so we've added on the website that's here, we've added different publications, different one-pagers to help you calculate that. You fill all that out on the online application, just like you would many other things. It will not let you turn it in until you have all the categories filled in. When you do that, it is time and date stamped. You will receive an automatic email. By the legislation, we take this in first come, first serve. And our evaluation is, is it a viable project that meets the 20%? And so what we're doing is we put them in order, and we schedule it for the next meeting. It is a very robust conversation, as you can imagine, among people who care very deeply. And I'm actually extraordinarily proud of this committee. And then we look at the application and we take them exactly in the order we have. Hopefully we can get it the next meeting. If not, certainly the meeting after that. And so we're looking at less than a month, hopefully weeks for that. When you are approved, Stephanie will contact you and work with you to send you the University of Arizona contract. That basically happens the next day after you're approved. And so we do it on a Thursday. She sends those out Friday, typically. And then once you sign that, because I already negotiated and made sure that they were countersigned by the University of Arizona because it's a standard template, that contract is in place. So as soon as you receive it and sign it, the contract is valid. Then Belinda, who is our finance manager, would work with you to create a vendor number. And that usually takes 2 to 3 weeks, hopefully less. And then when you are ready, we would send you a template. You would bill the University of Arizona for the 50%. My goal is to have that to be under 30 days. It's actually going pretty quickly. And we're talking weeks. And then once and I don't control this, our financial service office gets the invoice, they issue the check, and they send it to you, either electronic deposit or check. And at that point, it's between you and the vendor. I know a number of vendors, and we've worked very closely with the Farm Bureau and some other industry groups to educate vendors out there. And I know you have a lot of salespeople that visit you a lot. There are many vendors that will work with you knowing that this money's good and start putting things in place. So you can basically work with a vendor to really get things lined up and ready to go. And then once you receive the check, pay them. Or some vendors have put in their contract that once you receive the payment, it's a net 15, those types of things. So vendors especially the smart vendors, will work with you, because again, once that contract has been signed, the money is good, no matter how slow, no matter how many weeks it takes. We work very closely with you, particularly as we start catching up on these applications. And if you're putting in new systems during crop rotation, we can try and anticipate that with you, especially if it's months out, and make sure you get that check to the best of our ability before you put a system in during crop rotation.
Talking about vendors, there were a couple questions that came in that Stephanie hopped on and answered, but I wasn't sure if anybody had looked through the question and answer section yet, so I just wanted to point this out really quick. Somebody had asked if there was an available list of preferred vendors, and Stephanie said that there wasn't an approved list of vendors, that it was up entirely to the applicant. But if anybody has questions about vendors, we can definitely start a network of vendors that we know are working with the project, potentially through Farm Bureau. That's something that I'd be willing to help facilitate. And one of the other questions that came in was, how many years running will the grant be available to take advantage of? And Stephanie had said that the grant applications will be going through October 2026. So if you
Yes,
this question.
but if I could address both of those really quickly.
Yeah.
The vendor list, I will say, this is about the 4th iteration. We had to work very closely with our university attorneys to make sure it met all of the criteria. And our university attorneys actually explicitly told me I could not. I was originally going to have an approved vendor list. They said I could not have an approved vendor list by their interpretation of the grant, which is why we don't. We do have Dia, particularly, and Charlie Sanchez are both irrigation specialists and know these very well. They can actually, in their extension role, help you design a system and figure out what you need to do in terms of contacting vendors. The vendor is your choice. Basically, what we'd need to see, and there are a number of vendors that have already worked through applications all the way to the end of this system. That is a good question to ask that vendor. And what we need to see is a vendor that has created a system with that 20% efficiency. And again, if you contact us directly and you say, has this vendor done this, or have you worked with this vendor, we can say yes or no. And we're always studying different things. You know, I mentioned telemetry. We're research scientists. This is what we love to do, I suppose. And so we're always studying these systems and looking for ways to improve them. In fact, what I'm really happy with, he went out to a farm as he was helping on the installation, and he sat down with the grower and the vendor, and actually redesigning the center pivot and the coverage saved the project about $100,000. So we view this as a partnership. I view this, my goal is to support you as much as we can, as quickly as we can, through a very difficult time. And so we will partner with you on that. So we can tell you about vendors, we just can't list them, and we can't steer you one way or another. If that makes sense.
So we have had a few questions. So thank you guys for interacting and asking those questions. This is my favorite part of all of the webinars that we do, is this interaction, and you get straight expert answers. So one that came in kind of towards the beginning says, who is that applicant? Producers only, or can a landowner that is not a producer be considered an applicant?
I'm trying to understand that question a little bit better. So basically the person growing the crop will be the applicant. A landowner, basically I do need the landowner or the landowner's permission. But if it's, I guess I'm trying to understand, and whoever, please text so I understand it fully. Is this a situation where I'm a landowner and I'm leasing to a grower and I'd like to see this grant? Yes, you can put it in, but it really, you'd need to, just to generate the commitment and the data, it would need to be done in tandem. If that makes sense. If you have someone leasing your land to grow alfalfa and you're like, I'm going to switch you to drip, that may be something you can force on them, but it may not be. So really, I'd like to see that done in tandem, because it really is that kind of a partnership, if that makes sense. If I'm a grower and I'm leasing the land, I would do the application. So if I'm leasing a land from someone to grow alfalfa, then all I'd need is a letter from the landowner giving me permission to do that. The reason being is we don't want to be in a situation where you're ready to go. We give you $1 million to put in the system, and they're in Pinal County and they decide to grow some rooftops, and so they sell it out from under you. And so really it would need to be done. I would recommend it in conjunction, both the grower and the landowner, if they're separate.
Who asked that. So hopefully we answered that, and if not, pop back on and give some clarification, and we will answer that for you. Anna Otto, who's at one of our staffers here at Farm Bureau, jumped on and asked if ranchers who have irrigated pastures eligible to apply.
Yes, they are. Again, we're moving from flood to something else. There are a number of ranchers that we're currently working with. And so, yes, you are. If you are currently flooding and you want to move to something else, we want to create that partnership. Obviously, with irrigated pasture, it's really designing something that works, because you have feed animals on that lot. So really designing it well, but we will help you do that. And we do have some ranchers who have been applying for irrigated pasture. One thing that I also have to say, wearing my extension hat, that I am pushing for, as some of you know and some of you helped, the legislature increased the baseline funding of the extension by $7.3 million. And I'm working very hard with the Farm Bureau and the cattle growers and all of our industry groups, Cotton and the Grain Council, to listen to you, to really build up our positions. And one of those positions that we've heard multiple times is actually a pasture specialist, because I recognize there's a difference between irrigated pasture and row crop. And so we are looking at that very seriously. If you have, as kind of a side extension thing, if you see positions that you need gaps in the service which we're providing, either geographically or by discipline, please let me know, because that's also my role in extension. And then the other thing, I'm really trying to create deeper academic partnerships. So for example, when I look at my soil health, I've actually connected my traditional row crop soil health with my rangeland and forest specialists, because we need to look at the soil health on that rangeland as well. And so I'm really trying to build teams around problems and connect people across disciplines to provide better coverage and service for you. Thank you.
Kind of a technical question that I'm excited to see your response to. So it says, I know this is for flood irrigation, but is there a way for farms with current drip irrigation that can attain grant funding for increased efficiency? So for example, converting from a deep drip system to a shallow drip irrigation system. And then they said, for example, which is shown about a 75% decrease in water usage on garlic crops.
That is a great question, and one that I actually don't have the authority to answer, but we'll find out. The legislation says from flood to something else, but what I will do, in fact, we have one of our committee meetings tomorrow, and I run this by, they're kind of my collective experts. I wish I had a PhD in irrigation and a PhD in soil health. I don't. And so I really defer to them. So what I will do in terms of that question, and Elizabeth, if you could share the information with me afterwards, I will ask my committee what they think. And then based on that input, I will go to our legislative partners and see what they think. At first blush, I would say no, but I came from economic development and I've owned and run businesses before. So I know that our goal is also to see if it's possible to get to a yes. And so I will take those steps. I don't know, because it does say transitioning from flood, but I will ask particularly the legislative leadership and funders to see if a 20% efficiency is exciting in drip to drip. So my commitment's to find out.
I'm not sure, but I'll get back to you. That was a good question though. And we will have this question or this presentation posted on the Arizona Farm Bureau website under webinars. It should be uploaded about tomorrow afternoon. So if you want to go back on some of these questions and look through the presentation, that will be available as well tomorrow afternoon. The reason I bring that up was somebody had joined late and asked if there was a link to use to flip through the deck. And while there isn't, because this is a live webinar, go ahead, Vic, and ask your question. If it's been answered, we'd love to reiterate it for you, or maybe it's a new question, we haven't got to it yet. And Rob Knorr, who had asked the question that you needed some clarification on, came back on. And he said that in Pinal County, specifically MSIDD, we're switching from surface CAP water to groundwater. And is there an opportunity for funds available to drill new wells or provide infrastructure to get new wet water to farms that had once surface water but is no longer?
That is a great question, Rob, and something I'm working very hard on. In terms of this program, if you can embed the cost of the well as part of the overall cost, if you still achieve that 20% gain, and I know there's some farms out in the Welton Mohawk area, I have to show a 20% gain and I have to show an on-farm irrigation. So for example, and I know the cost of this gets very quick if we're doing like a sprinkler center pivot system, but say hypothetically, you're moving away from irrigated to well water, you have to put in your well and you have to put in another system because you just don't have the pressure coming out of the head gates. We can fund that entire system up to 1,500 an acre. So my cap on that is 1,500 an acre. So if you are able to design a system, even if you can get other funds, like I mentioned, EQIP and some of these other funds that I'm actually trying to reach out and work with our conservation districts to partner and make more funds available in partnership. I'm going to continue trying to do that, but say you are able to do that, I'm looking at the 20% and the total project cost. So I guess that's what I'm saying is if you can embed all or part of the well cost into that, under that 1,500 an acre cap, absolutely, yes, you can include the well. I know with the cost of putting in some of these systems, that is very hard and difficult and may not always be the case. But I can tell you out in the Welton Mohawk area, we've had some applications that included part of the well as part of the application cost.
Are joining and asking those things. So one of the questions that came in was if the grant is available for very small new farms that are specifically like vegetable crops. So we talked about the size limit on the larger end. Is there a small end as well?
There's no small end. We've seen it across the gamut. We've seen down the dozens or acres, as long as you can make the economy of scale work. There is no limit on the minimum size, and we will work with producers of all sizes. One thing that I did remember in terms of what Stephanie had said about the grant length, December 2026, that is true. However, I will tell you that this set of money is moving very quickly. As I said, we've already approved 20 farms at 10 million. And so the caveat is when we run out of the money, we will work with you to monitor the funds, and we will always be lobbying for more funding for this and other programs that support our growers and farm community. And like I said, I think the legislature, I'm very optimistic that they're going to fund another 30 million or, thereabouts. So I'm looking for more funding in this program. The caveat is when the funding is out, the funding is out. Yeah.
So Charlotte Mortimer asked, how about VFD pumps to more efficiently control the water?
Is this, to clarify, this is on farm, but we're still, so I guess the question is, are we still using flood? And unfortunately, I cannot do that by the purview of the grant. And I know we've looked at, I mentioned telemetry and the ways that we do the timing of our head gates. I can't pay for moving from flood to a more efficient flood. I've had this conversation ongoing with the legislature. At this point, I do not have the support to do that. So I would need to move from flood to something else. In terms of the pump, if you are moving to something else, if that's feeding a drip subsurface above or a sprinkler system, absolutely, yes, we can look at that project. Did that answer the question, Cheryl?
The variable flow pumps, not with flood.
Okay, we could look at that because that is an issue of telemetry. Again, we need to look at how the water is getting onto the crop directly. And so that's an irrigation question, but yes, we could, and I'd be happy to sit down with you and one of our irrigation specialists and kind of walk through the dynamics of that and really kind of think through the whole project. But yes, that is a possibility. But again, we're moving from flood to something else. And that something else can't be flood less often.
So Vic Patel jumped on and said that he's developing 2 orchards, one on virgin land and one that was previously farmed many, many years ago that used to be on flood irrigation, and wants to know if either situations are eligible for the grant, and then prefaces it with that he says, I have no water usage history on the flood irrigated land, just see the old well and the infrastructure that are present.
That's a good question, and we can go up to 5 years back. So if you're looking at previous before 5 years, we'll talk and I'll see if we can get someone out there to look at those records. But really, we need to see something. We need to see some form of agriculture on that land previously in the past 5 years. In terms of the virgin land, unfortunately, we cannot do that. I have to move from flood to something else. That's the constraint of the grant. But in terms of the historic record, if we can look at if there's been something in the past 5 years, if we're looking ancient history, again, I'll talk to the committee with the item, but really I need something in the past 5 years.
Following up with this, as it's uploaded as a recorded webinar, would probably be that brand new land situation. So I'm glad that was asked. Thank you for asking that.
Thanks,
okay. Great. So is there any other questions that are coming in? Julie Murphy, who Dr. Orr said that has some an opportunity to get some follow-up information about your aggregated data. So she's propositioning you to write some things for her, which I definitely agree we should get together and have some articles written.
Julie, I would love to, because again, it celebrates the entire farm community. That aggregated data, I will tell you, is astoundingly good. And I actually was at a meeting with Dia at a different thing yesterday, and I said, we should really put this out there, and I could see his entire face light up. So yes, Julie, we want to work with you to celebrate the innovation of our growers. And frankly, it's something that we've been doing. And that's why I always start with that first slide, those numbers. we've been doing this for generations, and we've been finding a way to do more with less. And so this is just another step, another block in that foundation that I'm very proud to be a part of.
Every day. Exactly. There were no new questions that came in. If anybody has any questions, you have a couple more opportunities to ask those. But is there anything else kind of wrapping up what we've been talking about, Dr. Orr, that you want to add? I know I have your contact information, and the link for the grant is on this last slide. And what we will do when I upload this later tonight or tomorrow is I will make sure that the link is available to use itself. Instead of just typing it in, that we'll have a direct link for that directly on our site.
Elizabeth, I really want to thank you, and I want to thank Stephanie as well. She has done an outstanding job administratively. This program wouldn't be having the success it is without Stephanie, and we wouldn't be able to get the word out to our partners and the growers that are really doing all of the work without the support of the Farm Bureau and the partnership between the university and the Farm Bureau. One thing I do have to say from the Cooperative Extension Service, you know, Jeff Silvertooth brought me into this. I appreciate that. And I have to say, we do have a new director, Ed Martin. I'm proud to be part of the Extension Service because of the core land grant mission of serving you. In my role really as the Director of Ag and Natural Resources, I want to hear from you. I want to hear where we're doing things right. I want to hear where we can do things better. Again, in terms of that coverage, my job is to make sure the Extension Service serves you. And I really, going back to 1912, 1914, I believe that. And I really am committed to that, to listening to you. So please call me anytime. Please email me. This program, other programs, our job is to make sure you have the knowledge and the resources in the field.
Much yet, guys, but Dr. Orr and I have some exciting ideas coming down the pike for you guys on some more webinars, some more things to partner with the University of Arizona later on this year. So be on the lookout for those. Thanks again, Stephanie and Dr. Orr, for joining us. I really appreciate you taking your time. And hopefully everybody who jumped on was able to ask their questions. There haven't been any new ones come in. So I think with that, we are ready to wrap up for the day, but thanks for joining us and spending some time with us.
Elizabeth, thank you for your time, and thank you to everyone that was part of the webinar.
Great. And be on the lookout for this to be uploaded, and we will see you guys next month. We have our webinar Wednesday on the Great Hearing Benefit, which is our newest member benefit. So be on the lookout for more information on that, and have a great rest of your week, guys. You're almost to the weekend.
Thank you.